Welcome to our deep dive on extreme ownership.
Extreme ownership.
We're going to be cracking open Jocko, Willink, and Leif Babin's book.
Oh, yeah.
Well, at least your notes and excerpts to really see what makes their leadership philosophy tick.
It's it's a fascinating look at leadership lessons.
Yeah.
Learned in the crucible of combat as Navy SEALs.
Right.
And how those translate into success in the business world.
Even just reading the preface, I was hooked.
Yeah.
They call themselves team guys, not heroes.
Right.
Right off the bat, it's not about individual glory.
It's about the collective.
It's about the collective.
Which tells you a lot about their approach to leadership.
Yeah, which tells you a lot about their whole approach to leadership.
Absolutely. And they don't waste any time
No.
throwing you into the fire.
Right into the action.
The book opens with Leif Babin in Ramadi, Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
One of the most intense battlefronts of the entire war.
Talk about pressure.
Yes.
He describes this insane close call where he's making split-second decisions, coordinating SEALs, EOD, and Iraqi soldiers all at once.
Yeah, it's incredible.
It really highlights how in combat, chaos and uncertainty are just the norms.
And that's where this whole idea of extreme ownership really crystallizes for him.
Right.
Babin realized that even when things went sideways,
Yeah.
even when the situation was total chaos as the leader, he had to own every mistake, every outcome.
Well,
No
yeah.
passing the buck, no excuses.
So that's a heavy concept. How did they take that experience and start to break it down into something actionable?
Well, that's where the SEAL training stories come in. You remember that anecdote about the boat crews in BDS?
Oh, yeah, the one where they kept switching the leaders around.
Exactly. You have this one crew that was constantly losing and another that always won.
Okay.
But when they swapped the leaders, the losing crew suddenly started winning,
Oh, wow.
while the winning crew stayed strong.
So it wasn't the guys in the boat, it was the guy leading the boat. That's a serious gut check if you're leading any kind of team.
It is.
That's underperforming makes you look in the mirror.
And it really shows you that leadership is not some innate quality.
Right.
It's about skills and mindsets that can be learned and developed.
Yeah.
Which is a huge takeaway for anyone, not just aspiring SEALs.
Okay, so we've got this powerful idea of extreme ownership. But how does that translate from the battlefield to, say, the business world?
That's where Willink and Babin really bridge the gap.
Yeah.
They show how these principles forged in combat can be applied to CEOs, managers, teams of all kinds.
Yep.
It's about recognizing those same patterns of leadership,
Yeah.
whether you're under enemy fire or facing a tough deadline.
Okay, I need an example. Give me one of those business world situations where extreme ownership comes into play.
All right, think about that example with the VP who couldn't get his manufacturing plan implemented.
Okay.
He was convinced it was a solid plan, but it just wasn't happening.
Right.
He kept blaming external factors, other departments, anything but himself.
So classic blame shifting. Where's the extreme ownership in that?
When he finally applied that lens,
Okay.
he had to ask, what am I responsible for here?
Oh.
And he realized he owned making sure his team understood the why behind the plan.
Yeah.
He owned getting buy-in from those other departments he was blaming.
So instead of pointing fingers, he started connecting the dots.
Exactly. And that's often the first step to turning things around. If you want to dive deeper into more of these examples and principles, remember the full book is linked in the description.
Okay, so we've got this foundation of extreme ownership.
Right.
What are some of the other key principles that Willink and Babin lay out to actually put it into practice?
Well, there's decentralized command, which is all about empowering the people on the front lines to make decisions.
Okay.
It's about trusting your team to execute without needing constant micromanagement.
Which makes sense in those high-pressure situations where things are changing fast, right?
Absolutely. You can't always be waiting for orders from the top.
Right.
Then there's prioritize and execute, which is crucial whether you're in a firefight or facing a mountain of tasks. It's about cutting through the chaos and focusing on that most critical task first.
Okay.
Get that done, then move on to the next.
It's almost like a mental hack for staying focused when everything feels urgent.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's cover and move,
Yeah.
a classic SEAL tactic.
Yeah.
But it's really about mutual support and teamwork no matter what you're doing.
So like watching your buddies back, whether you're clearing a building or collaborating on a project.
Exactly. It's that fundamental idea that the team succeeds or fails as a unit.
I'm seeing a pattern here. It seems like these principles are all about empowering your team,
Yeah.
giving them the trust and the tools to operate at their best.
And that's where the real strength of extreme ownership comes in.
Okay.
It's not just about taking responsibility. It's about creating a culture of ownership throughout the entire team.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But how do you create that kind of culture? How do you get everyone to buy into this idea of extreme ownership?
Maybe we can unpack that a bit more in the next part of our deep dive.
I'm ready when you are. And for anyone listening who wants to go even deeper into those principles, the full book link is in the description. So you're asking about building a culture of extreme ownership.
Right.
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It is.
Because it's one thing to say, I own everything.
Yeah.
But it's another to get everyone on your team to think that way.
Right, because how do you go from individual ownership to collective ownership?
Right.
It almost feels like you need everyone to have that same aha moment that Leif Babin had in Ramadi.
You hit the nail on the head. It's about mindset.
Right.
And that's something Willink and Babin emphasize throughout the book.
Yeah.
They actually dedicate a whole chapter to this idea of the dichotomy of leadership.
Okay, but break that down for me. What's so dichotomous about leadership?
It's about balancing opposing forces.
Okay.
They argue that effective leadership isn't about going to one extreme or the other. It's about finding that sweet spot in the middle.
So give me some examples. What kind of opposing forces are we talking about?
Think about it this way. You need to be confident, but not cocky.
Okay.
You need to be aggressive in pursuing your goals,
Right.
but also prudent and thoughtful in your approach.
Yeah.
It's about being both a leader and a follower,
Okay.
knowing when to take charge and when to step back and let others lead.
That's a lot to balance. How do you even begin to develop that kind of nuanced leadership style?
It starts with self-awareness.
Okay.
You need to understand your own strengths and weaknesses, your tendencies and biases,
Right.
and then you need to be willing to adapt your leadership style
Okay.
to different situations and different people.
It makes me think about that example in the book where the CEO had to make a tough decision about a long-time employee.
You mean the one where he had to balance loyalty with what was best for the company?
Exactly. That always stuck with me because it wasn't a clear-cut right or wrong answer.
It was a classic dilemma where you have to weigh competing values and make a judgment call.
And those are the kinds of decisions that define leadership.
Right.
There's no easy formula, no playbook.
Yeah.
It's about judgment. It's about courage.
Yeah.
It's about taking ownership even when it's hard.
So how does this idea of the dichotomy of leadership tie back into building a culture of extreme ownership?
Because it sets the tone for the entire team.
Okay.
When you as the leader model that kind of balanced, responsible approach, it creates a ripple effect.
Okay.
People see that you're not afraid to take ownership,
Yeah.
that you're willing to admit mistakes, that you're committed to continuous improvement,
Right.
and it inspires them to do the same.
It's like setting the bar high for everyone, including yourself.
Exactly. And another key principle that contributes to that culture of extreme ownership is this idea that discipline equals freedom.
Okay. That one always felt a bit paradoxical to me. How can discipline lead to freedom?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
When everyone knows their role,
Yeah.
when everyone knows the standard operating procedures,
Yeah.
when everyone is disciplined in their execution,
Right.
it actually frees them to operate more effectively.
Because you're not wasting time figuring things out or second-guessing yourself?
Exactly. It's about creating a framework that allows for creativity and innovation within a structured environment.
Okay.
They give a great example of this in the book with the disciplined search procedures they used during raids.
Oh, yeah. The SEALs were initially resistant to that, weren't they?
Yeah.
They just wanted to go in and ransack the place.
Exactly. They thought it was too rigid, too time-consuming.
Yeah.
But what they discovered was that the disciplined approach was actually faster, more thorough, and most importantly, it reduced their risk.
So by being disciplined, they actually gained more freedom to operate safely and effectively.
Exactly. And it's the same principle in the business world.
Okay.
When you have clear processes,
Yeah.
clear communication, clear expectations,
Right.
it creates an environment where people can thrive.
It's almost like having a set of guardrails so you can go faster without worrying about veering off the road.
That's a great analogy. And when you combine that with the principle of decentralized command, it's really powerful.
Because you're empowering people to make decisions within that framework. right?
Yeah, exactly. You're giving them the freedom to operate independently while still maintaining a high level of discipline and accountability.
It's about trusting your team, giving them the tools they need, and then letting them do their jobs.
And that level of trust is essential for building a culture of extreme ownership.
Right.
Because when people feel trusted, they're more likely to take ownership.
Wow.
They're more likely to step up. They're more likely to go above and beyond.
That makes a lot of sense. But trust is a two-way street, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's not just about the leader trusting the team. It's about the team trusting the leader.
You're absolutely right. And that's where another crucial principle comes in, leading up and down the chain of command.
Okay, unpack that one for me.
It's about recognizing that leadership isn't just about giving orders.
Okay.
It's about communicating effectively. It's about building relationships. It's about understanding the needs and perspectives of the people above you and below you in the chain of command.
So it's about being a good communicator, a good listener, and a good advocate for your team.
Exactly. And it's about recognizing that everyone has a role to play in achieving success.
They give great example of this in the book about how they were constantly getting bombarded with questions from their superiors in Ramadi.
Right. At first, they were frustrated by it.
Yeah.
But they realized that their superiors were just trying to do their jobs. They needed that information to make informed decisions.
So they learned to be more proactive in communicating up the chain of command.
Exactly. And they also learned to be more understanding of the pressures that their superiors were facing.
It sounds like a valuable lesson in empathy and perspective taking.
And it's just as important in the business world when you're leading up.
Yeah.
It's about keeping your superiors informed, making sure they understand the challenges you're facing, and advocating for your team's needs.
And when you're leading down.
It's about providing clear direction, setting clear expectations, and giving your team the support and resources they need to succeed.
It's about empowering your team and helping them to see how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
Exactly. And it's about creating an environment where everyone feels valued and respected.
So we've got these interlocking principles. Discipline equals freedom, decentralized command, leading up and down the chain of command.
Yeah.
It seems like they all reinforce each other, creating this virtuous cycle of ownership and accountability.
And when you combine that with the leader's commitment to extreme ownership, it's incredibly powerful.
It's about setting the tone, building trust, empowering your team, and creating a culture where everyone is striving for excellence.
And it's not just about achieving success. It's about building a team that is resilient, adaptable, and capable of overcoming any challenge.
That's an inspiring vision. But how do you actually translate all of this into concrete actions? How do you go from theory to practice? That's something I'd love to dive into a bit more in the next part of our deep dive.
Let's do it. And just a reminder for anyone who wants to explore all of this in more detail, you can find a link to the full book in the description.
All right, so we've covered a lot of ground with extreme ownership.
We have.
The mindset, the principles, the culture.
Yeah.
But it all starts to feel a bit abstract
Right.
if we don't talk about how to actually put it into action, right?
You're exactly right. It's easy to get caught up in the concepts,
Yeah.
but the real power of extreme ownership is in its application.
So where do we even begin if I'm trying to embrace this philosophy, not just read about it? What are some tangible things I can start doing differently?
Well, Willink and Babin offer a ton of practical advice in the book, but
Okay.
I think it boils down to a few key things first and foremost.
Yeah.
And this might sound deceptively simple.
Yeah.
It's about owning your mistakes,
Okay.
no matter how small. No matter how much you think someone else is more at fault.
Okay.
Start by looking in the mirror.
Okay, so that's individual ownership.
Yeah.
How do we scale that up to a team level?
Communication is key.
Okay.
And not just any communication,
Yeah.
but clear, direct, and proactive communication.
Okay.
That ties back into leading up and down the chain of command.
Right.
Make sure your team understands the why behind what they're doing and that you understand the challenges they're facing.
So no more siloed working. Everyone's got to be in the loop.
Exactly. And when problems arise,
Right.
because they inevitably will,
Yeah, of course.
approach them with a solutions-oriented mindset.
Okay.
No blame games.
Right.
Ask yourself, what's my part in this and what can I do to fix it?
So it's about taking action, not just dwelling on the problem.
Right. It's about that bias toward action.
Okay.
And that's where prioritize and execute comes in.
Right.
Break down complex problems into smaller, manageable tasks, and then tackle them one at a time.
Okay, so we're owning our mistakes, communicating, clearly taking action. What else?
Don't underestimate the importance of simple things.
Okay.
Simplify your processes.
Right.
Simplify your language. Simplify your goals.
Yeah.
The more complex things are,
Uh-huh.
the more opportunities there are for things to go wrong.
That's where simple comes in, right?
Yeah.
One of their key principles.
Exactly. It's about cutting through the noise and focusing on what truly matters.
And it's something we can all apply whether we're leading a team or just trying to manage our own lives.
Absolutely.
It's like that saying, complexity is the enemy of execution.
I love that. And speaking of execution, another crucial aspect of putting extreme ownership into practice is building a culture of discipline within your team.
Right. We talked about discipline equals freedom. How do we actually foster that kind of discipline?
It starts with setting clear expectations and standards.
Okay.
Everyone needs to know what's expected of them, and they need to be held accountable to those standards.
And it's not just about being strict or authoritarian.
Yeah.
Right.
No, it's about creating a culture of excellence,
Right.
where everyone is striving to be their best.
Okay.
And that requires feedback,
Yeah.
both positive and constructive.
So regular check-ins, open communication, and a willingness to both give and receive feedback.
Absolutely. And it's important to celebrate successes along the way. Recognizing and rewarding effort and achievement helps to reinforce that culture of discipline and excellence.
It's about creating a positive and supportive environment where people feel motivated to do their best work.
Exactly. And when you combine that with the principles of extreme ownership, you create a team that is not only high-performing, but also resilient and adaptable.
Because they're not afraid to take ownership.
Right.
They're not afraid to make mistakes,
Yeah.
and they're always striving to improve.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of extreme ownership. It's not just a set of tactics or techniques. It's a mindset that can transform individuals, teams, and even entire organizations.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one thing you hope listeners will take away from our conversation about extreme ownership?
That this isn't just some rah-rah military stuff.
Right.
It's a philosophy that's relevant to anyone who wants to take control of their life and achieve their goals.
Yeah.
It's about taking responsibility, leading with courage, and building a team that can overcome any obstacle.
No matter what battlefield you're facing, whether it's in the boardroom at home or even within yourself. And if you want to go deeper, grab the full book. You'll find the link in the description. Until next time, stay curious,